Welcome to Summit University. Today our guest is Stephen Acuff. He's a best-selling author and lecturer on health and diet in Europe and the United States. Mr. Acuff specializes in the macrobiotic diet. He is an instructor at the Cauchy Institutes in Massachusetts and a nutritional counselor at a medical clinic in Germany. He is also director of a macrobiotic center in Sweden. Mr. Acuff is here today to talk about Oriental diagnosis.
This hour I wanted to continue with our examination, health evaluation of our participants up here on stage so everyone can take a look at them and see what they would say about their conditions. And I've also had the request that I answer some specific questions. So I have said that I would be willing to quickly read through questions. If you have some question you would like me to address this afternoon in our first session, I can look through before in the lunch break, I'll look at the questions, and the ones that I think are the most important, or the ones that are repeated by several people, I'll try to address those for a while so that we can get into those things that are important to you, because it's, of course, not possible to answer them all in the context of a seminar like this. So that's a possibility. Just drop them up here at the end of the session today before we break. Okay, so let's go right into our next session, which is dealing with the practical side of diagnosis. During the break, I spoke to one young woman who has several things going on which were not possible to really talk about in the break. So I told her we'd just take her up here now and we'll see what we think of her condition and maybe we can learn some new things. So would you like to come up? Okay, right there, that's fine. So let's take a look now. First of all, basic constitution. Let's look at your hands. So in general, I hear the word coming out more yin. Goes a little more towards the inside here. Let's check your lifeline here. Lifeline is not bad. You can see, if you're sitting in the first row, you can see that there's a very clear line. So she has potential for good help. Let's take a look at these earlobes. Okay, a bit there, but we'd say kind of in the middle somewhere. Now, just looking at her, I'm sure I'll be able to feel her vertebrae. And in fact, I can. And it's very soft. Not too soft, it feels okay here. It's very easy to slide my hand under the shoulder blade. Check your Achilles tendons here. Not too bad, a little bit puffy, but not too bad. So, let's take a look then at her face. We've decided that she has a yin constitution. Being tall, that's a pretty good giveaway anyway. What things strike you when you look at her? I hear some people saying it. It's shoulders. See, really, even though it's fairly soft here compared to some of the hardness we've seen in other people, this looks a little weak, doesn't it? She doesn't look like she's got that stability. Remember in our previous session talking about this having resources, you know, for life. She looks like she doesn't have that excess, that inner contact to her own resources, her nutrients. Now, what other things would you see here, looking at her? You see a certain puffiness. It's an interesting puffiness because it's not the puffiness we see in some people who have a lot of excess, you know, like the double chin and that kind of thing, but rather it's a subtle kind of puffiness. It's like lacking a tone, lacking a certain firmness. And we especially see it in which area? Okay, here in the cheeks, very good. And eyes, that's right, in this area here. So, if you can see her closely, you'll notice also that she has the discoloration under the eyes, showing some kidney stress. But just looking at her this way, she looks like she wouldn't have much thing going on in the liver, just spontaneously. So we can check the liver. So just find rib cage here. Now breathe in and out. So even though there's nothing showing on the face, her liver is somewhat expanded. It's a little tight. Should be more flexible. So here, through touching diagnosis, we're able to see something we didn't see on the face so easily. Is your menstruation in order?
PMS.
Mm-hmm. I asked this question about menstruation because the telltale chin that we've had in earlier times, for you, may be difficult to see. The camera will be able to pick it up better. We can see there is a change in the skin quality in this area. She also has a tendency to these pouches building at the ovaries. So again, many young women today are experiencing problems in this area, and it's a reflection of a general imbalance in their health, because it's the barometer of health. So she has a more yin constitution. She also has a more yin condition. So it's pretty clear what she should do, seen from this perspective. She should direct her food more towards the yang side. In other words, grains, the emphasis on root vegetables, especially sweet vegetables. This area here is showing spleen weakness, and if you look up close, you can see what we would also call in the pancreas area. She's got spleen-pancreas disturbances. Sweet vegetables are the best way to deal with that. And also a sweet vegetable drink, which you make by just chopping sweet vegetables very fine and cooking them and drinking the water, the cooking water. So sweet vegetables are an important part for her getting that nourishment she needs, but just sweet vegetables will be a little too slow, so the other is better. If she finds herself attracted to sweet things, this is not good for her to take sweets. Even balanced kind of sweet, like malt, grain malt sweeteners, rice malt, barley malt, even these grain sweeteners, for her, should be taken at a minimum, but it should be the amount she needs to be comfortable. We have to go this middle way between optimal and realistic. That's always our purpose. So, if she now gets a strong craving for sweet, which vegetable has the fastest sugar? Carrots. Carrots are the fastest. Squash is also pretty good. Parsnips are good. Parsnips are almost as fast as carrots. So those are great vegetables, but also now and then maybe drinking a small cup or glass of carrot juice, freshly pressed carrot juice, could give her that sweetness that she's looking for and will enable her to stay away from these stronger sweeteners.
Makes my blood sugar go wild.
Oh, does it? Makes it go wild?
Blood sugar.
Yeah, well, you look like you would have some blood sugar problems. The purpose I had in recommending that was if you find yourself attracted to other things which bring on strong blood sugar ups and downs, that would be a replacement. If you, in your own experience, find that doesn't work, of course, then the advice you wouldn't take, because in the end, your own experience will decide it. But as she said herself, blood sugar is definitely our topic here. And when you look at her, she looks like, she needs some kind of extra energy. She looks like depletion, like depleted energy. And I would imagine that this would have to be taken in a program that would be quite encompassing. Number one, she should be sure to get lots of physical exercise every day. This doesn't mean jogging, but just it can be jogging if it's not exaggerated, but it's more these life-related kind of physical things we're talking about, or walks, like walking up the hill, is optimal exercise.
I have a back problem which prevents me from doing a lot of activity sometimes, and I'm wondering if that's a yin condition, maybe the expansion, it's the ligaments and muscles and things like that.
You have a back problem in the lower back here? Well, this area is probably coming also, the disturbance is for sure a weakness that has to do with yin. Things are tight and firm enough, but also this area is very closely related to the sexual organs. There's acupuncture points here also which are related to the sexual organs. And you have so many things going at one time, that's why we couldn't take care of this in the brain, that you need, number one, to have a lot of patience, so the liver is important. It will take a while to get this in order.
What do you start with?
What you start with is looking at the basic macrobiotic program, and then you start making the adjustments that are necessary. Like for you, I wouldn't consider the liver to be number one problem, but rather we look, so far we've seen liver, kidney, pancreas, spleen, and sexual organs.
Those lungs too, I think.
That's right. Your body posture shows also lungs. And if we want to be very exact, let's look at her lips.
Intestines.
That's right, the intestines, because part of the problem with your wrong posture is not only weak lungs, but you have a tendency, this is like kind of just going out here, and this may also be giving you some of that back problem. It's partly the sexual organs, but also the intestines. And it's just, like if I...
I'm going to turn sideways.
No, okay, yeah, turn sideways, that's fine. You see that? With her body posture? Okay. Because she's thin, it doesn't show up as much as if she had more weight, but she should then think about the number one problem is dealing with her blood sugar, and the sweet vegetables are very good. Now, when she says that she can't handle carrot juice, then for me, the next step for getting out of this vicious circle would be to take what we call vegetable jam. Heard of vegetable jam? You make jam out of vegetables. You take the sweet vegetables like carrots, parsnips, onions, sweet pumpkin, especially these four are the best. And usually we take them individually, so we have variety. We chop them, we saute them in a little oil with a slight pinch of salt, sea salt. Then, because they're chopped very finely, we're going to cook them very long, and they're going to just turn into a mass like jam. So, in the beginning, you just have a little bit of oil in the pan. Then, as they cook on, you need to add water. So you start adding water, a little bit. If you add a lot, it doesn't get sweet, so you just want to have it simmer with a little bit of water. So it's almost like frying in water, just having a little bit of water, and this mass of vegetables just becomes more and more like jam, and the longer you cook this, the sweeter it becomes. So after 1 hour, it's pretty sweet, and after 2 hours, it's really sweet. It's, for people who don't eat sugar, it tastes almost as sweet as fruit. So, because it cooks so long, it is a kind of vegetable sugar which is more readily available than if you would just prepare a normal root vegetable dish. But on the other hand, it's not too fast. It doesn't go as fast as with the juice. As you may know, when you take the fiber away from vegetables or fruits, you accelerate the sugar absorption. That's why we take something like carrot juice if we feel we're having a hypoglycemic crisis. Now for her, it doesn't work because she's so unstable that it just brings her totally out of balance,
I
right?
crave chicken and protein when I'm having a blood sugar crisis.
That's understandable that you're craving protein, because when your protein consumption increases, this has a blood sugar stabilizing effect. And so what you should do is, first of all, considering your constitution and your body build, you should not eat very restrictive foods, because you're always going like on that fine line of becoming like deficit, too little. So you need to be very, let's say, very aware of how you can get richness out of macrobiotic food to satisfy your needs and give you a little more reserve. And this means don't go too easy on the protein, even though in the last session I pointed out that excess protein tends to burden the liver and the kidneys. But that's not our major problem here. And especially when we see this body form, we know that she doesn't have to be afraid of excesses so much. She has to be more the other way aware. She has to be careful not to get too little. So what I have found is this, that a macrobiotic breakfast, which includes some form of protein, is the best way to, number one, balance your blood sugar, and number two, give you that excess that you feel good. So a common macrobiotic breakfast that we serve in our center in Sweden is we start with a miso soup, the vegetable soup with the miso soy paste, the seasoning. The soup should not be very salty. It should taste sweet rather than have a strong miso taste. Of course, it depends on the kind of miso you use. Some have more taste than others. In any case, not lots of miso, but rather using that miso as a subtle background for the vegetables. Then we usually eat some kind of grain. This is in the form of porridge, oats, or rice, or millet, whatever you like. Best is to have variety. And then we may put some seeds or some chopped almonds or other condiments, seaweed and sesame condiments for the veterans. And then you feel good, because this is the kind of food that's very light, and you get the day started, you feel good. It's lightly digested, and especially if you have excess, you'll find that you can lose weight faster that way. Now, if you do that, you're going to already before noon probably have blood sugar problems.
Well, in 15 minutes I'm hungry.
15 minutes, okay, not even 10 minutes. So what you need is richness, and that starts with breakfast. So if you take some form of protein with breakfast and also oil, no breakfast without oil or protein for you, okay? This can be, if it has to be done fast because you don't have time, just saute a piece of tofu. That would be one thing. Now, we don't want to take lots of tofu, because it's a concentrated form of the soybean. So this is not something to do every day. But a couple times in the week, tofu is fine. And you could also take the wheat gluten, which we call seitan, the protein part of wheat. Has a very thick consistency and is very satisfying to people that like to have chewy things to eat.
Fu?
Fu is fine. And also, you can soak the fu. Fu is a wheat protein product like seitan, for those who are not familiar with it. You soak it and then still fry it. Because I found out that people with this kind of health problem, they don't feel good unless breakfast has some oil and some protein. It's this: if you think of how long it's been since you had anything to eat, it was yesterday evening, and hopefully not very late, because late eating is very bad for both your liver and your intestines. As a rule, we say, a rule of thumb, 3 hours before you go to bed, don't eat anything. Now, people who have blood sugar problems usually can't do that. They'll wake up in the middle of the night, you know, ready to kill for food. So, rather than that, what we do is, later on, maybe 8 or 9 o'clock, you take something light, but don't take protein or oil. Those slow your digestion down. When you get hungry 15 minutes after the food, this shows it's very lightly digested. Your body breaks it down very fast. You chew the food well. It's very quickly through, and already hunger's coming on. Because your blood sugar isn't proper. Your pancreas and your liver actually are working like a work team to keep your blood sugar in balance. It's like it kind of goes back and forth a little bit. And those two organs are both out of order. So what you have to do is slow down the digestive process. There's nothing that will slow down digestion faster than oil. Like, let's take an example. If you eat a bowl of rice in the morning and you put a few sesame seeds on it, something like that, a little bit of seaweed powder. That's what people do when they're doing what we call a discharge kind of diet, or a very cleansing kind of diet. Then that for you would mean very quickly you come out of balance, because it's just too little. If you were to now take nuts, and not just a little bit, but say like a big handful of nuts, which are very high in oil, 50, some of them even 60% oil, then you would experience that this bowl of porridge goes much slower through.
Toasted nuts.
Yeah, that's right. Lightly roasted is the best for nuts, not eating them raw. So that, if you do that for breakfast, it'll already make a difference. And it was very interesting for me to find that out, because this has been one of the things through experience in the years that has become obvious. You know, most people who come to the macrobiotic program are interested in a lot of discharging. They've got a lot of excess, and they want to get rid of that, and so they eat very lightly in the morning, and they feel good doing that. And for some people, that becomes the standard. But for you, that's totally the opposite, because you don't need that. You need the richness. Now, a person who's trying to lose weight or get rid of excess, like we've seen, let's take a look at your arms to show this. Say we have no problem here taking the skin off the arm like we saw before. Like she doesn't have this excess fat layer. Because you don't have that, you don't have to worry about this discharge phase, but rather just getting those foods that are nourishing. And when the protein and oil levels go up, you'll feel that your blood sugar stabilizes.
And when the blood sugar stabilizes, once that problem is dealt with, then I deal with another organ?
That's right. And while we're stabilizing the blood sugar, we do this. For breakfast, maybe you'll also, as a sweetener, take some of this vegetable jam. Maybe for today we're having carrot jam. Delicious, huh? Carrot jam. And then you can make it for 3 or 4 days at one time. And then, you know, you get tired of this if it was always carrot jam. You know, that's the standard every morning. So the next time, it's onion jam.
You put it on bread?
You can put it on bread. Now, what happens to blood sugar if you eat dry bread? You know? Blood sugar goes up very fast. Bread is not optimal for blood sugar problems because it tends to go up and down a lot. It's interesting if you look at the studies that have been done. If you eat buckwheat, like buckwheat for breakfast, first of all, it's very alkalizing. It's actually not a grain, buckwheat. Grains in general, with the exception of millet, are more acid forming. Buckwheat is alkaline forming. So if you have buckwheat for breakfast, you have a very slight rise in your blood sugar. So people who are really prone to strong fluctuations in blood sugar, when they eat buckwheat, it just doesn't rise that much. Rice is a little bit more. Then when you eat bread, you get it more like this, going up fast. Now if you steam the bread, steaming means we put the slices of bread in a vegetable steamer with a little bit of water, and just for a few seconds we let the steam of boiling water go through the bread, and it makes it lighter. It can even remind you of a fresh baked bread. Now, if you go to answer the telephone while this is happening, you'll come back to a soggy mess. So the art of this is getting just the right amount of steam. Then, studies have shown that blood sugar increase is actually more like this. So you want to be careful just eating bread that way. And also cut the crust off the bread, because that will also create more upward. It's interesting. Do you know how potatoes go when you eat potatoes? These lovely nightshades? Very strong upward. It's kind of interesting that people like to eat potatoes with meat. You know, the standard diet is potatoes and a meat dish, because meat will tend to suppress your blood sugar. And if you just were to eat the meat, you might not feel good. But if you eat meat and potatoes, then you've got one thing going this way and one thing going this way. So there's, you know, some kind of a balance. It's not optimal balance, but it's easy to see why people like those two. And as we drop the animal food away, we have less attraction to potatoes in general. So you want to take these things that just have the softer blood sugar. She's a good example because the problems she's experiencing are very common today. This is what we call hypoglycemia, blood sugar ups and downs. And if people don't get this in order, their pancreas can become so weak that in the long run it will function less and less, and they can become diabetic. The common market has a central health authority in Brussels, and their projection for the next 20 years is a sharp increase, a tripling to quadrupling of the diabetes rate in Europe. Imagine, today we have 5% diabetics in our society. Imagine what a tripling of that would mean. Imagine 15% of the population diabetic. What would that mean for the economy, for life quality, for mental clarity? So these kind of problems are very, very common today. The pancreas is being pushed beyond its limits. So you take the vegetable jam and have that. You can also take it on rice cakes, if you like rice cakes. Mm-hmm. But rice cakes, of course, are very light kind of food. You know, they're 90% air, so they're not real nourishing food, but they're kind of a nice thing to complement the meal. So you can have that. Or you can put it directly on the grain. So with that as breakfast, then you will probably want to have snacks in between, because blood sugar problems require more meals during the day and smaller amounts each time. So try to get into a pattern. What works best for blood sugar is that you get a rhythm going. And it doesn't matter what that rhythm is, but just keep that rhythm day after day, because your body will just click into that and you'll have an easier time getting over it. Okay? So then lunch should also be rich. You should also take some form of protein and some oil. Okay? Then in the afternoon, maybe a snack. The easiest snack is just to eat a second portion of lunch. You know, people don't have time to do a lot of cooking and now fixing a snack in between. If you're rushed, just eat leftovers. Because our food is, well, even though we include oil, it's not oily food. It's not like that we've fried things in butter. You know, how interesting is that to eat as leftovers afterwards, you know? But if you are using oil, it's very, very nice, you know, to eat those leftovers. Sometimes, especially in the summer, you don't even have to heat them, because you're chewing them 50 times, so they're warming up in your mouth anyway. So then the evening meal is the one where you'll go a little easier now, because you've had protein these for breakfast and lunch. The evening meal you can do lighter. It's interesting, but liver function actually starts coming on actually in the middle of the night. That's when the acupuncture usually starts. The middle of the night, liver function starts coming in gear, and it's really rolling by breakfast, and it goes right on through lunch and kind of reaches its peak about lunch and then starts tapering off towards dinner. That's why some people feel when they eat a big meal, say 6, 7 in the evening, it doesn't feel good. They feel like it kind of just sits there because the liver is starting to shut down to take its rest phase, and then in the middle of the night it'll start coming on again. So that's why you would try to put the emphasis of your food to the earlier part of the day. That'll also give you the blood sugar for the day, so for your activities. So once you've got this problem of blood sugar under control, then you can start thinking about, I would say, kidneys. Because when I just experience you here as a vibrational pattern, that makes sense? It's like this thing I had before, like the kidneys. It's like to me, she really needs this dynamic force to get going. You know, it's like instead of moving forward in life, it's being held up by weak kidney energy. So to really get that going, the next phase would be the kidneys. Now, we have a very wonderful way of heating the kidneys up, and that is ginger compresses. And many people are aware of those. You can read about them in macrobiotic books, but it's very easy. It's just using fresh grated ginger root, which you let steep in very hot water, but not boiling water, until the water cools off so it's tolerable for the skin. And then you put towels in this ginger water and apply those to the kidneys. The ginger sends the heat very deep. If you just put a hot towel on, that's nice, but it's more a superficial kind of warming. When you put ginger compresses on, it goes very deep. Some people who do ginger compresses daily start smelling like ginger out of their mouth because the ginger goes so deep that it then is discharged again. So you might try that sometimes during the week, maybe 2, 3, 4, even 5 times a week. You can see what works for you. A nice time to do it is in the evening because it's very relaxing. You sleep well afterwards. So that would be a good compliment. See, she's a good example here because we have so many things. We go just from blood sugar right into the kidneys. So
Anything else for dietary-wise for the kidneys?
what do we do dietary-wise for the kidneys? First of all, let's keep in mind that the kidneys are the central focal point for our mineral balance. And when our kidneys are weak, we've generally got mineral problems.
I think I've got mineral deficiency.
I would think that you've got mineral deficiencies too. And so seaweeds.
But I can begin that right away.
Oh yeah, actually you see, you can do this simultaneously. We're just kind of putting priority on that. We're talking about these things. There's nothing wrong with doing 2 things at once. I think we got in more of this idea of doing that first when we're talking about the liver, that because your liver is also somewhat expanded, that if that was the only thing bothering you, then we would say let's go easy on the protein and oil for a while and try to clear that up. But because we have conflicting things here, we have to take priorities. And your liver is not the major thing here, but rather the blood sugar, and then secondary is kidneys. And then, of course, lungs, this posture. So for the kidneys, seaweeds, and we do it in different ways. We take seaweed dishes. And I hope everyone is aware of these names of these seaweeds because most of them have Japanese names. And sometimes when I'm doing counseling, I start mentioning these Japanese seaweeds, I can see myself losing the person. You know, he's like, his eyes are beginning to go off to a distance. When I say arame, isiki, kombu, wakame, nori, these are Japanese seaweeds, but they're very good, very tasty. Now in the U.S. there are also good seaweeds. There's American wakame, there's American kombu. Most people tend to prefer the Japanese kombu, but you don't have to have Japanese seaweeds. Ireland has dulse, and just take whatever ones you like. But in any case, everyday seaweeds.
Every meal?
Not every meal, and the portion should not be a lot. So what it is the frequency is often every day, not necessarily every meal, and sometimes taken in the form of condiments. That's either sesame seeds mixed together with seaweed powder. The favorites are kombu and wakame. Or if you like the taste of seaweeds a lot, you can do it without the sesame. Some people find the taste of seaweeds by themselves to be too strong. They like it made more gentle, let's say, through the sesame. Then doing some side dishes. I would say about 4 or 5 times a week you take a real side dish of seaweeds. Our favorites are isiki and arame. Those two. And
is a liquid mineral harsh on the kidneys, the kind they sell in health food stores?
well, the problem with taking mineral concentrates is that your body doesn't take them up so well. Your body is very wise, first of all. It's very selective and only takes things in a certain context. Some people will take iron pills. They'll take iron pills, which are very big, and no matter how many they take, they just don't get their iron up. But the body's just not accepting that. The body will only accept it in a certain context. And that's very wise. You know, if your bodies would accept all of the calcium people take through milk, everyone would be calcified. Everyone. You know, everybody. This is great. No osteoporosis, you know. But what happens is your body doesn't accept that because it knows if your body were to accept all that calcium that's in milk, you would cease to function. And this happened in the 60s. Very interesting experiment that was done, actually kind of a perverse experiment, in England, where they had a lot of black people moving in from the British Commonwealth, from the Caribbean, from different places, living in England, and they found that because the black skin is actually optimal in a hot climate, they found that the vitamin D production in black children in England was too little, and they were finding cases of rickets in black children. So they increased the amount of vitamin D in the milk, because as you increase the vitamin D amount, you override the body's blockage of accepting calcium. The result was that the other babies, the Caucasian babies that were born, they started having problems with calcification, and some babies were born dead, totally calcified. And they immediately, when this happened, understandably, they reduced radically the units of vitamin D they add to the milk again. So the body knows what's good for it, and through our modern technology, it is possible to override those body mechanisms. But the important thing is to just always use common sense and think like, how does nature give me minerals? One way is seaweeds. Another way is green wild vegetables, like dandelions. There's nothing better than dandelion leaves. If you've got them, you know. Some people are out spraying poison on them, trying to get rid of them. They have no idea that this is one of the greatest gifts that we have is the dandelion. Not only the leaves, but also the roots. And if your friends have gardens and they don't like them, then you can go over and harvest them. They'll be happy. You take their dandelions, you get stronger from it. Now, some of wild plants do have high amounts of oxalic acid. So it's good to check in books about wild foods foraging and see which wild plants are high in oxalic acid and which aren't. Dandelions are not high in oxalic acid, so they work fine. But that kind of mineral-rich food. Now, dandelion leaves don't taste particularly tasty to many people because they're bitter. What gives the bitter taste? Minerals, very good. So, everything that tastes bitter in greens, like the leaves of vegetables, where we normally use the vegetable to throw away the leaves, like radishes. The radish green is very high in minerals. All these mineral-rich foods are good for kidneys. Also, burdock roots, which are sold in macrobiotic shops often. We're big consumers of burdock roots. So, by getting mineral-rich foods, and buckwheat is good. Now again, I mentioned before, buckwheat on a hot day for some people is very warming. So you have to think about your preparation. But in this climate, there's a lot of the year where buckwheat is just fine. So that would be ways to increase the kidney function and get more into balance. It would start creating like a dynamic force. And the other things I would do is for your posture, so you can start increasing your oxygen supply, which will also give you more energy, is to do this kind of a stretch. I'll show you how you do it. You just stand like this with your feet about this far apart. The forward foot is about halfway on the back foot. I turn my hips now to the front, and I have my forward knee slightly bent. Now I've got my arms like this. Now the lung meridian in acupuncture starts here at the clavicle and goes out to the thumb. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn 180 degrees like this, and this is going to give a good stretch for my lung meridian. It's going to be a stimulation. It's going to be a little bit like putting acupuncture needles in the lung meridian. But this is something you can do every day. You don't have to have a lot of training to do it. And then the next thing I'm going to do is, with the twist, is I'm going to move my hips forward. Moving the hips forward, I'm then also going to look up. So what I'm doing basically is I'm opening this whole area. So it looks like this, in and out. In and out. Very simple exercise, very powerful. If you do 10 of these a day, you'll
Both
find...
sides?
That's right. You do, say, 5 on one side, 5 on the other. Same thing. And you can do a couple times a day. This will be very beneficial. Now, just to caution you when you're doing this, I teach this sometimes as part of seminars, not only this but other exercises for health. And I see again and again the major mistake people make when doing this is they don't move their hips forward, so they do this. So it's got to be the forward movement, and then you get the real twist. It really opens things up. I like to do this every day if I've got time. I do this because I feel good doing it, starting the day. I don't like to do this in a room where there isn't good oxygen flow. So I either go outside if the weather permits, or I open the windows for a few minutes, but good oxygen is important for this one. So you do that one, and that will also help. It'll start loosening this up.
And walks or something like that too? Walks?
Yeah, that's right. And taking the walks that are possible for you. Now, if your back is giving you problems, one thing that'll be nice is when you do the ginger compresses, take a fairly fat towel and put it on not only your kidneys, but also the area immediately under the kidneys. And you can, if you feel it really is doing good, you can sometimes even make like a cross, let's say, over the kidneys and then the lower part of the spine, like that. About 30 minutes. You have to change them because they cool off.
Right.
So you change them, and 30 minutes. If you feel good doing it, a real full program is to do 6 days in a row and then take a day off, and do another 6 days and take a day off. That's a real good way. If that's too much time or too powerful, a couple of times a week is okay too.
Now for candida, which I've been told I have, can you just make a seaweed broth instead of a miso or something like that in the morning?
That's right. Now, if you've got candida, then there's a lot of things to consider besides that, because candida is a very big problem, and it means that you have to be very careful with other things. Unfortunately, we can't do candida diagnosis by looking at people. It's an intestinal fungus which occurs more in women than men. It's very rampant today. Some people think that about 30% of American women are infected with it. It's an opportunistic infection. It can only really get going if your intestinal flora gets out of balance. It happens with people who have repeated antibiotic treatments. It happens with women who have taken the pill, steroid. It happens in people who have eaten a lot of sweets and sugar. Those are the things that the medical people today have discovered. So when you've got candida, you have to take into consideration that carbohydrates are in general feeding the candida. So you may have to kind of put this program I told you about a little pushed forward, and you may have to, in the short run, do some special things about candida before you can do the full program, because the program I just explained to you is very high in carbohydrates because you need those to balance blood sugar. But in these first weeks of dealing with candida, first of all, I would get a good candida cleansing supplement. It's very difficult to deal with this without supplements. Acidophilus is very important for replenishing the acidophilus in the intestines. And then you have to eat more protein and oil, because those don't stimulate candida growth as carbohydrates do. So one carbohydrate is the vegetable jam. So very good for balancing blood sugar, but you may find that you get bloating or discomfort or digestive problems when you take it, because candida feeds on that. So my experience is, as an average, about 3 or 4 weeks is all that's necessary to get candida behind you if everything else is in order. Like not too stressed. If you get stressed, it will reduce your immune system again, and then you'll be back in the problem. So you have to try to keep your workload at something that's tolerable, not too much. So also, I think for her as an example here for you is very good, because I'm often asked about candida. In the clinic in Germany where I work, we have anywhere from 50 to 60 patients who choose the macrobiotic program, and at any given time there's anywhere from 5 to 10 of those who have to have special candida food, because it's just not possible for them to eat carrots and sweet vegetables, because the carbohydrate content is so high that they don't get over the hump. So they have to reduce carbohydrates. That means actually the sweet taste in general is pretty much reduced. Protein doesn't taste sweet. Carbohydrates taste sweet. So it's doing without sweet. No fruit, no sweeteners. And then usually after 3 or 4 weeks, they get that behind them. They're taking more of these other kinds of vegetables that don't taste sweet, like kale and burdock roots, and there's many others. In any case, taking these kind of vegetables, and then gradually you can start in again. It's okay. We don't take fermented foods like miso during the time we have candida, because in the first phase, these fermented foods will tend also to accelerate candida growth. So it becomes a more boring kind of food, but it's something usually that goes over. If you have a clear line of what you're doing, it's over in a couple of weeks, and then you can expand it again. Usually the miso is the last thing we reintroduce. The sweet vegetables can be reintroduced earlier, and then we go into the other. So, got a pretty thorough counseling session today, huh?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So, we can see that health balance is not always easy. Here we have a woman who is trying hard to make healthy food work for her, and still problems. So it's not always easy. And so it's good to have such examples so that everyone can get a good idea about what to do. You have to be flexible. You have to decide where are your priorities. Which organ is most important to deal with, which other things harmonize with that, and what things you leave aside for the time being. That's what it's really about. And then as the health condition improves, you can take more and more steps to get the optimal program. If she were to do this and she finds that her liver still feels tight, then later on, once she's recovered her strength, she can experiment with cutting back again on protein, cutting back on the oil. One good thing about summer is that if you do feel that you need discharge, This means not too much protein, not too much oil. The summer is the best time to do it, because in the winter it's much more difficult to do without it. People feel cold all the time when they eat oil-free food in the winter. But in the summer with the heat, you don't notice it. So our real discharge possibilities run from, let's say, May through September. That's the best time of the year to do that. So for those of you just getting into it now, let's grab August and September and get it in balance, because by the time the autumn sets in, you'll be already pretty clear. It only takes a couple of months to get this in order. If you work diligently at this and always learning from mistakes, that's how we learn. So you'll do things sometimes and you'll react. You may discover that eating certain foods, like one example is the carrot juice. You take the carrot juice and you discover, no, that's not good for me. Make sure you have a good memory and make a note of that. Biggest problems are people don't have a good memory. And they have to be given the signals from the order of the universe again and again. Like, why did I eat that sugar? I know, I feel lousy when I do that, but you forget again. It looks so tempting and so delicious. And then comes the next signal again, the hammer, and then you recover from that one again, and it goes on like that. But if you really have a good memory, you don't have to have too many of these hits before you start realizing what is necessary for good health. So, this hour we've then had a thorough examination of a very complicated health problem, but one which is definitely manageable with a little perseverance. And in further sessions we'll take a look at some other people, and I will be happy also to answer your questions as time permits. So first session, after this break, we will continue with some questions. Thank you.